The hidden power of words. Narcissists fear. Before we talk about the phrases narcissists hate, let me ask you something unsettling. Have you ever walked away from a conversation knowing something felt deeply wrong, but you couldn't explain why? No shouting, no insults, just a strange heaviness in your chest, a creeping doubt in your mind, and a quiet voice asking, "How did I lose myself again?" Here's the shocking truth most people never realize. Narcissists are not empowered by strength, intelligence, or even cruelty. They are empowered by your emotional participation. And what they fear most isn't anger, confrontation, or being called out. What they fear is silence, certainty, emotional independence. That's why words, simple, calm words, can feel more threatening to a narcissist than any argument ever could. Many survivors believe they need better logic, stronger evidence, or the perfect explanation to finally be understood. But narcissistic dynamics don't operate on logic. They operate on control. As long as you are reacting, explaining, defending, or hoping to be seen, the narcissist is winning, quietly, efficiently, and without raising their voice. Picture this. A woman sitting alone in her apartment late at night, replaying a conversation over and over. She didn't yell. She didn't accuse. Yet somehow she feels smaller than before. That moment, right there, is where narcissistic power lives. Not in what was said, but in what was taken. Now here's where it gets unsettling. Narcissists don't collapse when you fight them. They collapse when you stop feeding them. When your words no longer carry emotion, urgency, or self-doubt. When your language signals something they cannot tolerate. I am no longer available for this. This is why certain phrases feel like psychological landmines to them. These phrases don't insult. They don't explain. They don't chase closure. They quietly remove access to your time, your energy, your emotions. And when that happens, the illusion of control begins to crack. What you're about to learn isn't about manipulation, it's about liberation. It's about understanding why a few grounded words, spoken without anger, can shake a narcissist's sense of power more than any confrontation ever could. If this resonates with you, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us continue creating content that brings clarity, strength, and healing to people who need it most. Before we continue, here's a quick question for you. Which do you think narcissists fear more? A. Being hated. B. Being irrelevant. Comment A or B below. And let's see how many people already know the real answer. Phrases that threaten a narcissist's ego and identity. There comes a moment, quiet, almost invisible, when you stop trying to prove your reality to someone who is committed to rewriting it. This is the moment where phrases like, "That's not true," "You're wrong," or "You lost," stop being statements and start becoming threats. Not because they are aggressive, but because they touch the one place a narcissist cannot defend: their ego-based identity. For someone like Daniel, being wrong is not a simple mistake. It feels like annihilation. His sense of self is built on appearing competent, superior, and unquestionable. When Claire calmly says, "That's not what happened," something fractures beneath the surface. There's no shouting, no dramatic collapse, but internally alarm bells go off. Reality is no longer bending on command. This is where many people get confused. They believe the narcissist reacts with anger because they are being challenged intellectually. That's not it. The rage, the deflection, the sudden coldness, those are defenses against shame. When a narcissist is wrong, even briefly, they are forced to confront a version of themselves they cannot tolerate. Ordinary, flawed, human. What makes these phrases especially destabilizing is not their content, but their delivery. When Claire says, "You're wrong," without trembling, without over-explaining, without trying to soften the blow, she removes the narcissist's favorite leverage: emotional engagement. She isn't asking to be believed. She's stating reality and standing inside it. And then there's the phrase, "you lost." To most people, it's a factual acknowledgement. To a narcissist, it's a declaration of humiliation. Losing means exposure. It means someone else didn't submit. It means the hierarchy they depend on just cracked. This is why narcissists rewrite outcomes, shift blame, or accuse others of cheating. The truth is unbearable. Here's the deeper truth most people miss. These phrases are not about winning. They are about refusing to participate in distortion. When you stop negotiating reality, the narcissist has nothing left to manipulate. Claire eventually realizes something powerful. She doesn't need Daniel to admit he's wrong. She doesn't need an apology. Her clarity is enough. The moment she stops seeking validation, the dynamic changes. Not because Daniel suddenly grows, but because his power depends on her doubt. And once doubt is gone, the illusion can no longer hold. Phrases that destroy entitlement and control. There is a specific kind of silence that falls the first time a narcissist hears a real boundary. Not a debate, not a justification, just a clean, grounded refusal. Words like, "I will not," "I cannot," and especially "no" don't sound dramatic. But to someone like Daniel, they land like an existential threat. Entitlement is the invisible engine of narcissistic control. Daniel doesn't see Claire as a separate person with her own limits. He sees her as access, availability, compliance. For a long time, Claire tried to soften her refusals. She explained. She apologized. She negotiated. Every sentence carried an unspoken message. "I still need you to approve of me," and Daniel felt that. He relied on it. The shift happens when the explanation disappears. "I will not do that. I can't help you with this. No." No backstory, no emotional cushioning, no defense. To a healthy person, these words are ordinary. To a narcissist, they are shocking. Not because they are harsh, but because they introduce something that was never supposed to exist. A limit they don't control. Daniel reacts the way entitlement always reacts when it's challenged. Confusion turns into irritation. Irritation turns into accusation. "You've changed," he says. "You're being selfish." What he really means is you're no longer bending. Here's the deeper layer most people miss. Boundaries don't just stop behavior. They expose assumptions. Daniel assumed Claire would always accommodate, always adjust, always make room. When she says, "I cannot," she's not just declining a request. She's dismantling a belief system that says her role is to serve his emotional comfort. And that's why these phrases provoke such intensity. A narcissist experiences boundaries as rejection, disrespect, even betrayal. Not because they are, but because entitlement cannot survive equality. Claire feels the fear rise in her chest the first few times she holds the line. She worries she's being cruel. She worries she'll lose him. But something unexpected happens. Each time she says no without collapse, her body steadies, her voice strengthens. She starts to feel solid in a way she never did while explaining herself. This is the quiet truth. Boundaries don't require permission. They don't require agreement. They only require self-respect. And once control is gone, entitlement has nothing left to stand on. Phrases that cut off. Narcissistic supply. There is a moment when control no longer works, boundaries no longer provoke compliance, and the narcissist reaches for their final weapon, emotional extraction. This is where narcissistic supply becomes visible. Attention, reaction, energy, proof that they still matter. And this is exactly where phrases like, "I don't care," "I'm busy and not now" become unbearable. For Daniel, conflict was never the goal. Reaction was. Whether Claire defended herself, cried, explained, or argued, Every response confirmed his relevance. Even her pain reassured him that he still occupied the center of her emotional world. That was the supply. What Claire didn't understand at first was that anger still fed him. Silence with tension still fed him. Explaining still fed him. The only thing that didn't was indifference. The first time she said, "I'm busy," and meant it, not as an excuse, not as a delay tactic, but as a statement of priority, something shifted. Daniel pushed. He texted again. Then again. He escalated. That's the panic response. When supply drops, narcissists don't retreat. They intensify. But Claire didn't rise to it. She didn't justify why she was busy. She didn't reassure him that she cared. She simply didn't engage. "I don't care." Those words didn't come from cruelty. They came from exhaustion turning into clarity. Claire wasn't saying she didn't care about anything. She was saying she no longer cared about being pulled into emotional chaos that led nowhere. And that distinction mattered. To a narcissist, indifference feels worse than rejection. Rejection still acknowledges importance. Indifference erases it. When Claire said, "not now," she wasn't withholding affection. She was withdrawing access. Time, energy, emotional availability. The things Daniel felt entitled to without question. This is where many people feel guilt. They worry they're being cold. They worry they're abandoning the relationship. But what's actually happening is a redistribution of energy. Claire is choosing herself without announcement, without punishment, without drama. And something remarkable happens when supply is consistently cut off. The narcissist begins to look elsewhere, or collapses inward. The manipulation loses momentum. The tension dissolves, not because the narcissist changes, but because the fuel is gone. Indifference is not numbness, it's freedom. It's the moment you stop organizing your life around someone else's emotional hunger. When Claire finally understood that her peace didn't require Daniel's understanding, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Quiet. And in that quiet, healing began. Using these phrases wisely: strategy, safety, and healing. There is a final truth that often arrives quietly, long after the arguments have ended and the phrases have been spoken. These words were never meant to change Daniel. They were meant to change Claire. Using phrases like, "no," "I cannot," "I'm busy," or "I don't care" is not about power plays or psychological warfare. Used carelessly, they can escalate danger. Used strategically, they restore balance. Wisdom lies in knowing the difference. Claire learns this the hard way. Early on, she tries to use boundaries as weapons, hoping Daniel will finally get it, finally feel what she felt. But narcissistic dynamics don't collapse under pressure, they fracture under consistency. The real shift happens when Claire stops using these phrases to provoke outcomes and starts using them to protect herself. Strategy means discernment. Not every situation calls for confrontation. Sometimes safety requires silence. Sometimes distance is the boundary. Claire begins to ask herself a different question before she speaks. What outcome am I protecting, my peace or my pride? That question changes everything. Healing is not dramatic. It doesn't arrive with a final speech or a perfect mic drop moment. It arrives through small, private decisions. Claire starts journaling after interactions, writing down what she wanted to say but didn't need to. She practices phrases alone, not to deliver them flawlessly, but to feel them settle in her body. She notices when her shoulders relax after choosing not to engage. Most importantly, she stops waiting for Daniel to understand. Understanding is not required for boundaries to work. Agreement is not required for no to be valid. This is where true safety emerges. Not from controlling the narcissist's reactions, but from trusting your own limits. Claire also learns that compassion and distance can coexist. She doesn't need to demonize Daniel to leave the dynamic behind. She can acknowledge his patterns without sacrificing herself to them. That realization loosens the final emotional knot. The goal was never to master 10 phrases. The goal was to reclaim authorship over her life, to speak when it mattered, to stay silent when it didn't, to choose herself without apology. In the end, the most powerful phrase Claire learns isn't spoken out loud at all. It's internal, steady, and unshakable. I am allowed to protect my peace. And when that belief takes root, the narcissist's power fades, not because they lost, but because they no longer matter. Claire's story doesn't end with a dramatic confrontation or a moment where Daniel suddenly understands the harm he caused. It ends in a quieter, more profound place. Over time, Claire realizes that every phase of the relationship followed the same pattern: confusion, self-doubt, over-explaining, exhaustion. What changed wasn't Daniel's behavior. It was her relationship with herself. Each phrase she learned to use marked a shift in identity. At first, the mom words like, "No, I cannot," or "I don't care," felt foreign, even cruel. But with practice, they became anchors. Claire stopped measuring her worth by Daniel's reactions. She stopped treating peace as something she had to earn. Slowly, she rebuilt a life that no longer revolved around managing someone else's emotions. The deeper lesson from Claire's journey is this: narcissistic dynamics thrive where self-abandonment exists. They weaken not through confrontation, but through clarity. You don't heal by proving the other person wrong. You heal by choosing yourself consistently, even when it feels uncomfortable, even when no one applauds. Applied to real life, this means learning to pause before reacting. Asking yourself, am I speaking to protect my peace or to seek validation? It means practicing boundaries privately before enforcing them publicly. It means allowing other people to misunderstand you without rushing to correct them. Healing often looks like less explanation, not more. Most importantly, Claire's story reminds us that recovery is not about becoming harder. It's about becoming steadier. Disclaimer: this video is for educational and informational purposes only and does not replace professional diagnosis, psychological evaluation, or treatment from a licensed mental health professional. Before we close, here's a quick question for you. What do you think creates more freedom? A. Being understood. Being self-respecting, comment A or B below. What are your thoughts or experiences with setting boundaries or using these phrases? Share your perspective in the comments so others can learn from you. And if this content resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us continue creating meaningful, healing-focused content for the next videos.